The silence in the Grand City Theatre of London was so dense it felt palpable. 15,000 people held their breath as the stage lights spun in hypnotic circles, casting dramatic shadows over the auditorium's gilded columns. The live broadcast showed 3 million online viewers, all awaiting the moment that would define the year's most anticipated charity gala night. At the center of the stage, enveloped in a sequined gown that reflected every beam of light like a shattered mirror, stood Bianca Santoro, the United Kingdom's biggest pop music star. 5 platinum albums, 17 national awards, a voice that, according to gossip magazines, could reach notes that defied the limits of physics. She smiled at the cameras with that confidence only absolute success provides, her white teeth competing with the sparkle of the diamond jewelry around her neck. But there was something different about that night, something that made her eyes gleam with an intensity that wasn't merely performative, it was cruel. Bianca raised her right hand, requesting silence from the orchestra already preparing for the next song. The conductor froze, his baton suspended in the air. Confusion spread among the musicians. This wasn't in the script. Actually, it was. Just not in the script they knew. The singer walked to the edge of the stage, her 6-inch heels echoing in the absolute silence. She looked at the audience, smiling like a predator who had just spotted the perfect prey. At the back of the auditorium, almost invisible under the dim emergency exit lights, a man in a navy blue uniform pushed a cleaning cart. His movements were mechanical, repetitive, the result of years of doing exactly the same thing. Collecting discarded cups, wiping champagne spills from the red carpet, being invisible while the rich celebrated. Rafael Mendes didn't even look up when Bianca began to speak, until she uttered his name. "Rafael Mendes, please come here." The cart stopped with a metallic screech. Rafael froze, his hand still clutching the damp cleaning rag. For a second he thought he had misheard. Maybe it was another Rafael. Maybe it was just his mind playing tricks after 18 straight hours of work. But then she repeated it, and this time there was no doubt. The voice echoed through the loudspeakers, amplified, impossible to ignore. "Rafael Mendes, the cleaning employee. Yes, you. Please come up here on stage." 15,000 pairs of eyes turned simultaneously. Rafael felt the weight of that collective gaze like plunging into icy water. His first reaction was to look around, searching for an escape route, but security guards were already moving, discreetly blocking the side exits. There was nowhere to run. His feet moved before his brain could process the situation. One step, then another. The central aisle seemed to stretch infinitely before him. Each step echoed too loudly, marking the rhythm of his public humiliation. People in the front rows pulled their expensive clothes away as he passed, as if the mere touch of his uniform could contaminate their imported silk. Raphael kept his eyes fixed on the floor. He knew that look. He had seen the same expression hundreds of times in the last 6 years, disdain disguised as indifference. When he finally ascended the steps leading to the stage, the spotlight hit him like a punch. It was so intense that he had to cover his eyes with his hand. Disoriented, he stumbled slightly, and a wave of muffled laughter rippled through the audience. Bianca Santoro waited until he positioned himself beside her. The difference between the two was stark. She, fully made up, impeccable makeup, every strand of hair in place. He in his wrinkled uniform, coffee stains on his left sleeve, old sneakers that needed replacing at least 2 years ago. The singer took the microphone and turned to the audience with a radiant smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice pouring false kindness like poisoned honey. "Tonight isn't just about music. It's about humanity, compassion. It's about remembering that all of us, no matter our position in life, have a special talent within us." Raphael clenched his fists. He knew that speech. He recognized the trap being set word by word, because it was exactly the same speech she had used 6 years ago. "My dear Raphael," Bianca continued, turning to him with those calculating eyes, "I'm told you love music. That sometimes you sing while you work. Is that true?" He didn't answer. He didn't trust his own voice at that moment. She interpreted his silence as agreement and proceeded, now addressing the cameras directly. "You know, I always say that true art doesn't choose social class. Talent can be anywhere. Even she paused dramatically. In a cleaner. More laughter from the audience. This time, louder, more confident. So I thought, why not give Raphael a chance to shine? Why not let him experience, just for a moment, what it's like to be up here? Bianca extended the microphone to him, but without actually letting go. Her fingers remained firmly clasped to the chrome base. Raphael, darling, how about you sing for us? A simple note, the one that made me famous. The A sharp in the 5th octave. You know which one it is, don't you? Everyone knows it. The audience erupted in applause. They loved it. The spectacle of humiliation disguised as kindness. The famous singer giving an opportunity to the poor fellow. What a beautiful story to share on social media. But Raphael didn't move. His eyes, which had been downcast until then, slowly rose and met hers. And for the first time since stepping onto the stage, he spoke. Turn off the backing track. Bianca's smile wavered. Only for a fraction of a second, but it wavered. Excuse me. Raphael took a step forward. His voice was low, but the microphone picked up every word with perfect clarity. If you want me to sing, turn off the pre-recorded backing track. Let's do this without tricks. Just voice. Just truth. A heavy silence fell over the auditorium. The orchestra musicians exchanged nervous glances. The conductor looked at Bianca, awaiting instructions. Backstage, a sound technician began to sweat. Bianca forced a laugh that sounded false, even to the least attentive. Raphael, darling, there's no recorded backing track. My voice is completely live. Is it? He tilted his head slightly, and something in his eyes changed. It was no longer the look of a submissive employee. It was the look of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Then there will be no problem in turning off the audio processing system, just to prove it. Bianca's face lost color under her heavy makeup. She opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Raphael turned to the orchestra. Conductor, could you do me a favor? Ask your soprano there in the 3rd row to play an A sharp on the violin. Just the note, no accompaniment. The conductor hesitated, looking alternately at Raphael and Bianca. The singer made an abrupt gesture with her hand, a clear negative. But the conductor, after decades in the profession, recognized theater when he saw it, and this was getting interesting. He nodded to the violinist. The young woman in her early 30s with hair tied in a severe bun raised her bow. The note filled the theater, crystal clear, perfect, lingering in the air like a challenge. Now, Raphael said, still looking at Bianca, sing with me just that note, the note that made you famous. The silence that followed was deafening. Bianca Santoro, the woman who supposedly possessed one of the most extraordinary voices in the United Kingdom, stood there like a statue. Her lips moved, but no sound emerged beyond a hoarse, unsteady whisper. Raphael waited. 1 second, 2, 5, 10. Then, without asking permission, without hesitation, he opened his mouth and sang. The note that came from his throat was not just technically perfect, it was transcendent, pure, raw. Every person in that auditorium felt the vibration in their bones, in their chest, in their soul. There was no digital processing. There were no studio tricks. It was just a man and his voice, connected in a way that technology could never replicate. Raphael sustained the note for 10 full seconds, then 15. The violinist stopped playing, but he continued, his voice filling every inch of the space, rising through the columns, echoing through the farthest corners of the theater. When he finally silenced, no one moved, no one breathed. And then, like a wave crashing against rocks, the audience erupted. Not in polite applause, in an ovation. People rose from their seats. Cries of astonishment echoed. Cell phones were raised, capturing every second of that impossible moment. Bianca Santoro remained frozen, the microphone still in her trembling hand, watching her empire begin to crumble live on national television for millions of witnesses. Raphael turned to her. His eyes held no triumph, only a deep, ancient sadness. 6 years ago, he said softly, just for her to hear above the crowd's noise, you told me I had wasted my talent, that I was a coward for choosing my family over fame, remember? Bianca didn't respond, but her eyes widened. Recognition, horror, memory. Rafael Mendez, finalist of National Star Search, the tenor who abandoned the competition on the final night. My real name, he continued, is Rafael Augustus Mendez Vieira, and I didn't waste anything. I chose love. Something you would never understand. He placed the microphone back in her hand gently, as if returning something that should never have been hers. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Someone needs to clean up the mess. Rafael descended from the stage to a deafening ovation. Each step was firm now, without shame, without fear. Behind him, Bianca Santoro faced the deadly silence of her own voice, and 3 million people online were already sharing the video that would change everything. Rafael's phone began to vibrate even before he reached the staff changing room. Then it didn't stop. Messages arrived in such rapid succession that the screen could barely keep up. Unknown numbers. Social media notifications he didn't even remember creating. Friend requests from people who would never look at him on the street. He turned off the device without reading any messages. His hands trembled as he took off the navy blue uniform and put on the worn jeans and grey t-shirt he wore to go home. In the cracked mirror of the changing room, he found his own reflection. The same face as always. The same deep dark circles under his eyes. The same 3-day stubble. But his eyes were different. There was something in them he hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. And that scared him more than anything. Outside, he could hear the chaos, raised voices, hurried footsteps, the unmistakable sound of a public relations crisis in progress. Someone was shouting orders in the hallway. Someone else was crying. A door slammed hard enough to make the walls shake. Rafael grabbed his old backpack, adjusted the straps on his shoulders, and left through the back door. The same one he used every day, the one important guests never saw. The December night in London was muggy, laden with the promise of rain that never arrived. Rafael descended the service stairs 3 steps at a time, his legs burning with the effort. He needed to get out of there before someone had the idea to look for him. But when he pushed open the exit door leading to Liberty Lane, he found something he didn't expect. Reporters, dozens of them. Cameras flashed simultaneously, turning night into artificial day. Microphones were thrust towards him like weapons. Voices shouted overlapping questions, creating an incomprehensible cacophony. Rafael Augustus, is it true you're suing Bianca Santoro? Did you plan this? Was it revenge? How much did the record label offer you to keep quiet? Where have you been for the last 6 years? Is it true your voice was stolen? Rafael lowered his head and tried to push his way through the crowd. Shoulders shoved. Someone stepped on his foot. A reporter grabbed his sleeve and he had to pull hard to break free. Please, he mumbled, but his voice was lost in the noise. Please, I just want to go home. But they weren't interested in what he wanted. They were interested in the story, in the scandal, in the clicks and views that moment would generate. That's when a firm hand landed on his shoulder. Rafael turned quickly, expecting another aggressive reporter. Instead, he found a woman in her 50s, grey hair tied in a practical ponytail, wearing a grey blazer over jeans and sneakers. She carried no camera, no microphone, just a brown leather briefcase under her arm. "Come with me," she said with natural authority. "Now." Before Rafael could question, she was already pushing her way through the crowd with the efficiency of someone who had spent her life navigating hostile spaces. Reporters tried to follow them, but she blocked them with firm gestures and precise words. "No comment. My client will not be making statements today. Any questions can be directed to my office." "Your client?" Rafael managed to ask as she practically dragged him along the pavement. "For now," she replied without slowing down. "Then we'll see if you officially hire me. My name is Vera Lucy Thompson, lawyer. I don't have money to pay a lawyer." "I know." She stopped beside a white Fiat Uno at least 15 years old. "That's why I work pro bono on cases that matter." "Get in." Rafael hesitated. Every instinct developed in 6 years of invisibility screamed at him to refuse, thank her politely, and disappear into the night. But there was something in Vera's eyes that made him trust her. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. He got into the car. Vera started the engine on the 3rd try and sped off. leaving the reporters running behind like a swarm of confused wasps. She drove with the same brutal efficiency with which she walked, changing lanes without hesitation, taking advantage of every gap in London's traffic. "You know who I am," Raphael finally said. It wasn't a question. "I do." Vera kept her eyes on the road. "I saw your National Star Search final 6 years ago. I was pregnant with my second daughter, feeling sick every day, but I still didn't miss a single episode of the season. You were extraordinary." "Was," Raphael repeated bitterly. "Past tense. From what I saw tonight, you still are." She took a sharp turn, ignoring the irritated horn behind them. "But that's not what I came to talk to you about." "Then what is it about?" Vera drove in silence for a few blocks before answering. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower, more serious. 3 years ago, I defended a case against Bianca Santoro's record label, a studio singer named Mariana Coast. She claimed her voice had been used without proper credit on several albums. We lost. The contract she signed was airtight, but I always knew she was telling the truth. Raphael felt his stomach tighten. "When I saw the video of what happened today," Vera continued, "I recognized something. The way you challenged Bianca, how you knew exactly where to strike. You didn't do that out of anger. You did it because you know the truth." "I don't know anything," Raphael said quickly. "I just asked her to sing without tricks." "Bad liar." Vera finally looked at him, and Raphael saw that she was smiling. A small but genuine smile. "It's okay, you don't have to tell me now, but you need to know one thing." "What?" "They're going to come after you. And when I say they, I'm not just talking about Bianca. I'm talking about the record label, the sponsors, the corporate lawyers, who earn more in an hour than you earn in a year. They'll offer money. They'll make threats. They'll turn your life into hell if necessary." Raphael already knew that. He had seen it happen before with other people who dared to challenge the system, but hearing it aloud made it all the more real. "So why are you helping me?" "Because I'm tired of seeing people like you crushed by people like them." Vera parked in front of an old building in the East End, its peeling paint illuminated by a single flickering street lamp. "And because Mariana Coast deserves someone to finish what she started." Raphael looked out the window. He recognized that street. It was only 3 blocks from his apartment. "How do you know where I live?" Vera shrugged. "I'm a lawyer, not a magician. Basic internet research. You should erase your digital footprint, by the way. Reporters are discovering your address right now." "Great," Raphael muttered, but didn't move to get out of the car. "There's something else you need to know," Vera said, her voice growing even more serious. "Mariana Coast contacted me tonight. She saw the video, and she wants to talk to you." Raphael's heart skipped a beat. "Is she willing to break the confidentiality agreement?" "I don't know, but she's willing to talk, and that's more than we've achieved in 3 years. Vera took a business card from her briefcase and handed it to Raphael. "My number's there. Think about what I said." "And Raphael?" "Yes?" "That story you shared about your wife in the show's final, about choosing to stay with her instead of competing, was that real?" Raphael felt the familiar pang of pain in his chest, the one that never truly disappeared, only hid in the hours when he was too busy to feel. "Yes, it was real. Caroline was in the hospital. She had a severe infection that affected her heart. The doctors called me during the final rehearsals. They said she might not make it through the night." "And your daughter?" "She was born 3 days later, premature, with the same heart problem as her mother." Raphael looked at his hands. They were still a cleaner's hands, calloused, with small cuts that never healed completely. "Caroline stayed with me for 8 more months, long enough to meet Isabella, long enough to make me promise I'd take care of her. And then she was gone." "I'm sorry." "Me too, every day." Silence settled between them. Outside, the city continued its frantic pace. Cars passed, people shouted, street vendors offered their wares on corners. Life went on, indifferent to the weight of individual stories. "Your daughter," Vera said carefully. "Isabella, does she still need surgery?" "She does." Raphael put the card in his pocket. "That's why I work 3 shifts. The public hospital has a 2-year waiting list. If I can save enough money to pay privately, she can have it in 3 months. but I'm far from it. How much is left? £87,000. Vera whistled softly. That's a lot of money. I know. You know that if you sue Bianca and the record label, you could get much more than that? Raphael shook his head. I don't want her money. I just want the truth to be exposed so that other people like Mariana aren't silenced. You're an idealistic idiot, Vera said, but she was smiling. I like idealistic idiots. They remind me why I got into this profession. She extended her hand. So, shall we do this right? Raphael looked at the outstretched hand. It was a small hand, with thin fingers and short, practical nails. The hand of someone who worked hard, someone who fought. He shook it. Let's. Great. Vera opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. Tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up famous. The video already has 5 million views and counting. By the end of the week, the whole United Kingdom will know your name. Are you prepared for that? No. Honesty. I like that. She handed him the documents. Read this tonight. It's a summary of the Mariana Coast case. I want you to understand what we're fighting against. And Raphael? Yes? Don't talk to any reporters. Don't accept any money. Don't sign anything without showing me first. They'll try to buy your silence in every possible way. Resist. What if they offer to pay for Isabella's surgery? Vera stared at him with those eyes that seemed to see through all masks and lies. Then you'll have to choose, again, between what's right and what's easy, just like you chose 6 years ago. Raphael got out of the car, holding the documents against his chest. Vera started the engine again, but before driving off, she rolled down the window. Raphael? One last thing. What you did tonight. It was brave, but courage without strategy is suicide. Trust me, okay? Okay. She gave a quick nod and drove away, the Uno's taillights disappearing around the corner. Raphael stood there for a long moment, listening to the distant city noise. Then he climbed the 4 flights of stairs to his tiny apartment. Each step creaked under his weight, a familiar symphony of old wood and poverty. When he opened the door, he found his mother-in-law, Mrs. Beatrice, asleep on the old sofa, the television still on some variety show. In the next room, through the half-open door, he could see Isabella lying in her small bed, her tiny chest rising and falling at a rhythm that always seemed too fragile. Raphael approached silently and adjusted the blanket over his daughter. Isabella was 5 years old but looked 3, too small, too pale. But when she slept, her face had that angelic peace that made everything worthwhile. Daddy will fix this, he whispered, kissing her forehead. I promise. Back in the living room, Mrs. Beatrice had woken up. She watched him with tired eyes, but there was something different in them. I saw the video, she said simply. Everyone saw it. I'm sorry, I didn't plan it. I know. She stood up, adjusting her worn bathrobe. But it happened. And now you need to decide what you're going to do with it. I don't know what to do. Mrs. Beatrice walked to him and held his face in her hands, the way Caroline used to do. My daughter loved you because you always chose to do what was right, even when it was impossible. Don't stop now, no matter what comes. What if I lose? What if they win and I'm left with nothing? Then you're left with nothing. She smiled, and for the first time in months, Raphael saw tears in her eyes. But Isabella will grow up knowing her father was a real man. That's worth more than any money. Raphael hugged her, and for a moment allowed himself to feel all the fear and exhaustion he had been suppressing. Then he pulled away, wiped his eyes, and opened the documents Vera had given him. He read all night, every word, every clause, every carefully constructed lie. And when the sun rose over London, Rafael Augustus Mendez Vieira knew exactly what he was fighting against, and exactly why it was worth it. Raphael woke to the sound of insistent knocking at the door. The clock on the wall read 6:30 in the morning, but he felt as if he had only slept for minutes. His eyes burned, and his head felt heavy as lead after spending the night studying legal documents. The knocking continued, louder now. Mrs. Beatrice appeared in the hallway, her face tight with worry. "Don't open yet," she whispered. "It might be reporters." Raphael approached the door and looked through the peephole. Outside, 3 men in suits waited. They weren't reporters. They were worse. They had that polished, predatory look of corporate lawyers, genuine leather briefcases, shoes that cost more than the apartment's rent. "Mr. Mendez," a voice called from the other side. "We're from Star Legal, a law firm. We're here at the request of Empire Records. We'd just like a civilized conversation, nothing official." Raphael looked at Mrs. Beatrice, who shook her head vigorously. But he knew he couldn't avoid them forever. If not now, it would be at some other time. Better to face it head-on. He opened the door just enough to keep the security chain in place. "You can talk from here." The man in front, a subject in his 40s with perfectly combed hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, showed a slight discomfort. "Mr. Mendez, it would be more appropriate for us to speak in private. We have a proposal that might greatly interest you and your family." "If it's a serious proposal, you can speak in front of my mother-in-law." The lawyer sighed, but maintained his professional smile. "Very well. My name is Dr. Henry Sampson. I represent the interests of singer Bianca Santoro and Empire Records. We are here to resolve this misunderstanding from last night." "Misunderstanding," Raphael repeated. "Is that what you call lying to millions of people?" Henry's smile wavered, but he quickly recovered. "Mr. Mendez, we understand you've been through difficult times. We know about your daughter, her condition. It must be very stressful to work so hard and still not be able to provide the treatment she needs." Anger began to simmer in Raphael's stomach, but he remained calm. "Get straight to the point." Henry nodded to one of the other men, who opened his briefcase and took out a thick envelope. "So their record label is willing to make a generous donation for your daughter's treatment, £100,000. More than enough to cover the heart surgery and even leave a reserve for any future emergency." Raphael looked at the envelope. He could see the edges of the notes through the paper. Real money, enough to save Isabella, enough to end years of sleepless nights, of constant worry, of counting pennies. And in return, Henry placed another document on top of the envelope. Just a small statement. "You admit you were nervous, that it was a moment of stress, and that you had no intention of harming Mrs. Santoro's reputation. That everything was an unfortunate misunderstanding. You publicly retract and everyone moves on. Simple as that." Raphael took the document and read it quickly. It was exactly what Vera had predicted. A confidentiality agreement disguised as a retraction. If he signed it, he could never speak about what really happened again. Mariana Coast would remain silenced. The lie would remain intact. What if I refuse? Henry completely lost his smile. Then things get more complicated. You see, Mr. Mendez, you publicly accused one of the United Kingdom's biggest artists of fraud, without proof. That's defamation, slander, crimes that can result in very expensive lawsuits. And frankly, do you really think a cleaner would have the resources to defend himself against a legal team like ours? Are you threatening me? I am presenting the facts. Henry adjusted his tie. Furthermore, it would be a shame if the hospital where your daughter is on the waiting list discovered you are a problematic employee. These institutions greatly value their reputation. Raphael felt his blood run cold. You wouldn't do that. We won't do anything, as long as you are reasonable. Henry pushed the envelope closer. Think of Isabella, Mr. Mendez. She needs you strong, not ruined by a battle you cannot win. Sign the document. Accept the money, save your daughter. Get out of my doorway. Excuse me? I said, Raphael repeated, his voice low but firm as steel. Get out of my doorway. Now. Henry took a step back, genuinely surprised. You're making a terrible mistake. No, the mistake was yours. You thought you could buy anyone. But not everyone has a price. Raphael closed the door in their faces and leaned against the wood, his heart pounding wildly, his hands trembled. He had just refused £100,000. He had just refused the chance to save Isabella. You did the right thing, Mrs. Beatrice said softly, but Raphael could see the fear in her eyes. Before he could answer, his phone rang. It was Vera. They've already been there, haven't they? She asked without preamble. How did you know? Because they're here too, in my office. They offered $200,000 to make me drop your case. When I refused, they said they would sue me for harassment and try to have me disbarred from the Bar Association. Raphael sat down heavily on the sofa. "Vera, you don't have to do this. It's not worth ruining your career for my sake." "Let me tell you something about my career, Raphael." She laughed, but it was a humorless laugh. "I've been threatened by people much worse than these fancy office sharks, and I'm still here. But I need you to promise me one thing." "What?" "That you won't give up, no matter what they offer, no matter what they threaten. Because if you give up now, Mariana will never have the courage to speak out. And every studio singer, every backstage musician, every invisible artist will continue to be exploited. I promise." "Great. Now listen. Mariana has agreed to meet you. This afternoon, 3 o'clock in my office. She's bringing evidence, things she's kept for years in case she needed to defend herself." "What kind of evidence?" "Original recordings, emails, contracts, everything that shows that the voice on Bianca Santoro's albums doesn't entirely belong to her. But Raphael, there's one thing you need to understand. If Mariana breaks the confidentiality agreement, she'll lose everything. The pension she receives from the record label, her house, everything. She's doing this because she saw what you did and found the courage to do the same." The responsibility of those words weighed on Raphael like a mountain. "I'll be there." "Great. And Raphael, be careful when you leave. The press found your address. There are TV vans all over the street." She wasn't exaggerating. When Raphael looked out the window half an hour later, he saw at least 5 vans from different broadcasters parked in front of the building. Reporters smoked cigarettes and drank coffee, patiently waiting for their prey. "How am I going to get out of here?" Mrs. Beatrice appeared beside him, holding a bag. "Through the emergency exit of the building next door. Mrs. Marlene owes me a favor. She'll let you through. But wear this first." Raphael looked inside the bag and found old clothes, a worn cap, and dark sunglasses. "Seriously, you're too recognizable now, boy. Better disguise yourself." 20 minutes later, Raphael was crossing Mrs. Marlene's apartment, an 83-year-old woman who looked at him with a mix of disapproval and curiosity. "So you're the singer who became a cleaner," she said as she guided him through the kitchen. "My granddaughter won't stop talking about you. Says you're a hero." "I'm not a hero, just someone tired of lies." Mrs. Marlene opened the service stair door. "Sometimes it's the same thing. Good luck, boy, and don't let the sharks eat you." Raphael walked through the streets of London feeling ridiculous in that disguise, but it worked. No one recognized him on the crowded subway. No one stared at him on the bus that took him to the city centre. He was invisible again, and there was a strange comfort in that. Vera's office was in an old commercial building on Baronet Street. The elevator creaked ominously as it ascended to the 5th floor. Raphael found the door with a simple sign, "Vera Lucy Thompson, Attorney at Law." Inside, the room was small but organized. Shelves full of case files, a scratched wooden desk, chairs that had seen better days. And sitting in one of those chairs, a woman of approximately 35, short brown hair, nervous hands holding a cup of coffee. Mariana Coast. She looked up when Raphael entered, and he saw fear there, but also determination. "Raphael," Vera said, making the formal introductions. "Mariana Coast, Mariana Rafael Mendez." They sat opposite each other, a heavy silence between them. "I saw what you did," Mariana finally said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I saw you confront her in front of millions of people, and I thought, if he can, I can too." Raphael didn't know what to say. Mariana placed a folder on the table. "For years, I sang for Bianca Santoro, not just on albums. In live shows, hidden backstage, singing while she lip-synced. In studios, re-recording every note she couldn't hit. I was her voice on 3 platinum albums. And what did I get in return? £200,000, a non-disclosure agreement, and the threat of being sued if I told anyone." She opened the folder, revealing stacks of documents. "These are the contracts. These are the original recordings with date stamps. And these," she pulled out a separate envelope, "are emails exchanged between the record label and producers discussing how to hide the fact that Bianca can't sing live without heavy assistance." Vera took the documents with reverent care. "Mariana, are you sure? If we publish this, there's no going back." "I know. Mariana looked at Raphael and her eyes were moist. But I'm tired of living in fear, tired of seeing my work credited to someone else, tired of being a ghost. Then let's do this, Raphael said. Let's expose everything. Vera nodded, already organizing the documents. I'll prepare a press conference tomorrow noon at the London Musicians' Union. We'll present everything. But both of you need to be prepared. When this comes out, it's going to be war. It's already war, Raphael replied. They just haven't realized they lost. That night, Raphael returned home by the same circuitous route. The vans were still there, but he passed unnoticed. He found Isabella awake, sitting on the sofa next to Mrs. Beatrice, watching cartoons. "Daddy," she shouted when she saw him, her eyes lighting up with joy. Raphael picked her up in his arms, feeling the delicate weight of her small body. "Hi, Princess. How are you?" "Good. Grandma said you were on TV. Is it true?" "It's true." "Did you sing?" "I sang." "Was it beautiful?" Raphael laughed, a genuine laugh for the first time in days. "I don't know. What do you think?" Isabella placed her tiny hand on his face, serious as only a 5-year-old can be. "I think it must have been the most beautiful in the world, because you're the best singer I know." And Raphael realized, holding his daughter, that it didn't matter what happened tomorrow. It didn't matter the threats, the lawsuits, the war that was coming. Because in the end, he already had everything he needed right there in his arms, and no one, not all the corporate power in the world, could take that from him. The London Musicians' Union had never seen so many people. The event room, designed to hold 80 people, was overflowing with over 200. Reporters, musicians, curious onlookers, supporters. Everyone wanted to witness the moment the truth would be revealed. Raphael arrived 15 minutes before the scheduled time, accompanied by Vera. She had insisted he wear better clothes for the occasion, and Mrs. Beatrice had lent him a dress shirt that had belonged to her late husband. It was a little loose in the shoulders, but it fit. Mariana was already there, sitting in a chair at the back of the room, her documents organized in her bag. When she saw Raphael, she gave a small, nervous nod. She was pale, her hands visibly trembling. "How are you?" Raphael asked, sitting beside her, terrified. She tried to smile, but it didn't convince anyone. "I spent the whole night awake thinking about backing out, about calling you and canceling everything. But you didn't call." "No, because I realized that if I did that, I would hate myself forever." Mariana looked at the gathering crowd. All these people, they deserved to know the truth, and I deserve to be recognized for my work. Vera stepped onto the small makeshift stage, testing the microphone. The sharp feedback silenced everyone. "Good morning," she began, her voice firm and professional. "My name is Vera Lucy Thompson, and I represent Rafael Augustus Mendez Vieira and Mariana Coast. Today we will present evidence of systematic fraud in the United Kingdom music industry." A murmur went through the room. Cameras adjusted. Reporters opened their recorders. But before we begin, I need to make something clear. Everything presented here was legally obtained and will be made available for independent verification. We are not making empty accusations. We are presenting facts. Vera nodded to Raphael and Mariana. They walked onto the stage, each step seeming to weigh a ton. Raphael took the microphone first. His voice, when it came out, was calm. Calmer than he felt. 6 years ago, I participated in the National Star Search program. Many of you may remember. I was in the final when I had to make a choice between my family and my career. I chose my family, and I was publicly crucified for it. He paused, letting the words settle. One of the people who criticized me most at the time was Bianca Santoro, a judge on the show. She said on national television that I was ungrateful, that I was wasting a rare talent, that I should never have participated if I wasn't willing to give everything for music. Raphael looked directly at the cameras. But the truth is that Bianca Santoro has no moral standing to talk about giving everything for music, because she herself doesn't give. She doesn't give her voice. She borrows someone else's. The murmur turned into noise. Questions began to be shouted, but Vera raised her hand, asking for silence. "Mariana, now it's your turn." Mariana approached the microphone with hesitant steps. When she spoke, her voice was so low that Vera had to adjust the volume. "My name is Mariana Coast. I've been a professional singer for 15 years. 8 years ago, I was hired by Empire Records to be what they call a studio voice. My job was to re-record parts of Bianca Santoro's albums where she couldn't hit the necessary notes." She took a deep breath, gathering courage. "At first, I thought it was just occasional help, touch-ups here and there. But over time, I realized I was singing more and more, entire albums, the songs that became hits, the live performances where she supposedly sang without playback. I was hidden backstage, providing the voice while she lip-synced." Mariana opened her folder and began distributing copies of the documents to the reporters in the front row. "Here are the contracts, the payment receipts, the emails between producers discussing how to hide my involvement, and most importantly," she held up a USB drive. "These are the original recordings with date and time, showing that my voice is on 70% of Bianca's last album." The room exploded. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes fired from all sides. The noise was deafening. Vera had to bang on the table to restore order. "We'll have time for questions after we finish the presentation. Mariana, continue." Mariana nodded, but Raphael could see she was on the verge of tears. "I signed a confidentiality agreement. I received money to keep silent. And for years, I did exactly that because I was afraid. Afraid of being sued. Afraid of never working in the industry again. Afraid of being forgotten." She looked at Raphael. "But then I saw this man have the courage to do what I never had. I saw him expose the fraud live without fear of the consequences. And I realized that I also had a responsibility to the truth, to my own dignity." Mariana turned to the cameras, and when she spoke again, there was steel in her voice. "Bianca Santoro built a career on my voice, on my work, on my talent, and now she will have to answer for it." The room erupted again, but this time it was different. It wasn't just journalistic curiosity, it was indignation, support, a collective sense of justice being served. Raphael took the microphone back. "We want to make it clear that we are not doing this for revenge or for money. We are doing it because the music industry is full of people like Mariana, talented artists who work in the shadows while others receive all the credit and all the profit. This needs to change." Vera took control again. "Now, we will take questions. One at a time, please." A reporter from the front row raised her hand. "Has the record label commented on these accusations yet?" "Not publicly yet," Vera replied. "But they tried to buy our silence yesterday. They offered substantial amounts to both Raphael and me. Obviously, we refused." Another hand went up. "Mariana, are you afraid of retaliation?" Mariana hesitated, but answered honestly, "Yes, I'm terrified. But I'm more afraid of continuing to live a lie, of looking in the mirror every day and seeing a coward." Questions continued for 40 minutes. Some reporters were skeptical, others clearly supportive, but all agreed that this was big, bigger than anyone had anticipated. When the press conference finally ended, Raphael and Mariana were surrounded by musicians who had come to show support, backstage singers, uncredited composers, all with similar stories of exploitation and silencing. An elderly man who introduced himself as Mr. John took Raphael's hand and squeezed it tightly. "Thank you, boy. Thank you for being brave. I worked 30 years as a session musician and never got credit for anything. You're doing more than justice. You're starting a revolution." Raphael didn't feel like a revolutionary. He felt exhausted, scared, but also, for the first time in years, hopeful. Outside the union, another crowd awaited them. But this time it wasn't just reporters. It was ordinary people, music fans, workers, people who had seen the original video and now watched the press conference streamed live on social media. They applauded when Raphael and Mariana emerged. Some shouted words of encouragement. A young woman approached with tears in her eyes. "My father was a jazz musician. He played for big names for decades and never received recognition. He passed away last year, still bitter. I wish he had lived to see this, to see someone finally fight." Raphael didn't know what to say, so he just held her hand and nodded. Vera guided them to a car that had parked nearby, but before they could get in, a group of security guards in black suits approached. They weren't threatening, just professional. "Mr. Mendez," the leader asked. "Mrs. Coast?" "Yes?" "We have orders to escort you. The record label is sending a legal team to intercept you. It would be safer if you came with us." "Who sent you?" Vera asked suspiciously. The man handed her a business card. "The British Association of Musicians and Performers. Their presidents want to offer legal and physical protection while this case unfolds." Raphael looked at Vera, who nodded after checking the card. "All right, we'll go with you." They were taken to an office in the city center where they were greeted by lawyers from the association. They explained that they had already begun organizing a class action lawsuit against Empire Records, gathering dozens of artists who had been similarly exploited. While the meetings took place, Raphael checked his phone for the first time in hours. He had hundreds of messages, but one in particular caught his attention. It was from an unknown number. The message was simple but powerful. "My name is Dr. Paul Carter. I am a cardiac surgeon at St. Jude's Hospital. I saw your story. If your daughter needs surgery, I would like to offer it free of charge. Not as charity, but as recognition. Because men like you remind us why we chose medicine." Raphael read the message 3 times, unable to believe it. "Vera," he called, his voice breaking. "You need to see this." She read it and smiled, but her eyes were also moist. "See? Sometimes courage inspires kindness. And kindness inspires more kindness. That's how the world changes, Raphael. One courageous act at a time." That night, Raphael returned home and found Isabella awake, waiting for him. "Daddy, everyone's talking about you at school. My teacher said you're a hero." Raphael picked her up and spun her around, making her laugh. "I'm not a hero, princess. I'm just someone who did the right thing. Isn't that the same thing?" Raphael thought for a moment, then smiled. "Maybe it is, yes, maybe it's exactly the same thing." As he put Isabella to sleep, his phone rang. It was Vera. "Turn on the TV. Channel 7, now." Raphael obeyed. The screen showed Bianca Santoro in a live interview. She was visibly shaken, her makeup unable to hide the dark circles and paleness. The presenter was not kind. "Bianca, millions of people watched the evidence presented today. How do you respond to the accusations?" Bianca tried to smile but failed miserably. "They're all lies. A conspiracy by envious people who want to destroy my work." "So you deny that Mariana Coast sang on your albums?" She may have contributed, but only as a backing vocalist. Nothing more." "We have the original recordings, Bianca. Your voice doesn't even appear on some tracks." Bianca's face contorted in anger. "You don't understand how the industry works. Everyone uses processing. Everyone has help. But not everyone lies about it." The presenter leaned forward. "Not everyone builds an entire career on someone else's talent." Bianca abruptly stood up, tearing off the microphone. "This interview is over." She walked out of the studio under the camera flashes, and the image froze on her face, distorted by anger. Raphael turned off the TV. He felt no pleasure in seeing Bianca's downfall, only a deep weariness and the feeling that finally justice was being done. Tomorrow, he knew, would be another day of battles. More interviews, more meetings with lawyers, more pressure. But today, at this moment, he had done what was right, and his daughter was going to have the surgery she needed, and that was enough. 3 weeks passed like a hurricane. Raphael barely recognized his own life. The class action lawsuit against Empire Records gained momentum with surprising speed. Dozens of musicians emerged from the shadows, each with their own story of exploitation. Composers who never received credit, producers who were paid a fraction of what they deserved, studio singers who, like Mariana, lent their voices to stars who couldn't deliver. The case became national, international even. Music magazines from all over the world covered the story. The hashtag #Justice for the Invisible went viral, reaching millions of people, and at the center of it all still was Raphael, the cleaner who dared to sing. But he was no longer a cleaner. The Grand City Theatre, under massive public pressure, offered to fire him or promote him to cultural events supervisor. Raphael chose neither. He resigned. He had other plans now. On the morning of the final hearing, Raphael woke early. Isabella slept peacefully in the next room, recovering from the surgery that had happened a week before. The operation had been a complete success. Dr. Paul Carter had been as good as his word, performing the procedure with an elite team and refusing to accept any payment. "Your daughter will grow up strong," the doctor had said after the surgery, holding Raphael's shoulders, "and she will know that her father changed the world for her." Raphael put on the suit Vera had insisted he buy. It wasn't expensive, but it was dignified. As he adjusted his tie in the mirror, Mrs. Beatrice appeared in the doorway. "Caroline would be proud of you." Raphael felt the familiar tightness in his chest at hearing his wife's name. "I hope so." "She would be." "Mrs." Beatrice approached and adjusted his tie with experienced hands. "My daughter always knew you were special. She always said you had the strongest heart she knew. Today, the whole world knows it too." The courtroom was packed, not just with lawyers and involved parties, but with supporters, journalists, and curious onlookers. The judge, Judge Felicity Moore, was known for her impartiality and rigor. There were rumors that she herself had been a musician in her youth, which made the case even more personal for her. Bianca Santoro sat on the other side of the room, surrounded by her legal team of 10 lawyers. She avoided looking at Raphael or Mariana. Her clothes were impeccable, but her face told another story. The weeks of public scrutiny had taken their toll. Empire Records was represented by its CEO, Mark Rivers, a man in his 50s with a perpetually irritated expression. He looked at Raphael with poorly disguised contempt. The judge struck her gavel, and silence fell over the room. "This court is in session." Judge Moore adjusted her glasses and looked to both sides. "We are here today to resolve multiple actions related to allegations of contractual fraud, copyright infringement, and artist exploitation. We will begin with the arguments of the prosecution." Vera stood up, her posture confident but respectful. "Your Honor, we will prove not only that Empire Records and Bianca Santoro defrauded the public, but that they did so systematically, for years, harming countless artists in the process." She presented the evidence meticulously: Mariana's original recordings, the internal emails from the record label discussing how to conceal the use of studio voices, the draconian contracts that trapped artists in silence agreements, testimony after testimony from exploited musicians. The defense tried to argue that it was all standard industry practice, that audio processing and backing vocals were common, that there was no fraud, just modern music production. But then the judge did something unexpected. "Mrs. Santoro," she said, interrupting a particularly technical argument from the defense lawyer. "Would you please approach?" Bianca blinked, confused. "Your Honor?" "Approach, please. Bring the microphone." Bianca looked at her lawyers, who seemed as lost as she was. Slowly, she stood up and walked to the front of the room. An officer brought a portable microphone. The judge looked at her with a neutral expression. "During these weeks, I have heard many technical arguments, many discussions about contracts and copyrights, but at the heart of this case is a very simple question. You, Bianca Santoro, claim that you can sing the notes for which you became famous. The prosecution claims you cannot. So let's settle this now." Bianca's lawyer quickly stood up. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this is not appropriate." The judge cut him off with a sharp look. "Counselor, the witness's credibility is at issue. If Mrs. Santoro publicly claims to possess certain vocal abilities, she must be able to demonstrate them, or she is admitting that her claims are false." She turned to Bianca. "I will play a note, the same note that made you famous. All you need to do is sing it, without processing, without assistance, just your voice." The silence in the room was absolute. Even breathing seemed to have stopped. The judge nodded to a technician, who played the note on a digital keyboard. The A-sharp echoed through the courtroom, crystal clear and unforgiving. Bianca held the microphone with trembling hands, opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out beyond a hoarse, off-key whisper. She tried again, and again, each attempt more desperate than the last, each attempt proving exactly what Raphael and Mariana had alleged. Finally, with tears streaming down her face, Bianca dropped the microphone. I can't." The words came out as a whisper, but the microphone on the floor picked them up with perfect clarity. "I never could." The room exploded. The judge had to bang her gavel repeatedly to restore order. "I have everything I need," she declared. "The decision will be announced tomorrow." But everyone knew. The war was over. Outside the courtroom, Raphael was surrounded by reporters. But this time he didn't flee, he was ready. "How do you feel?" a reporter asked. Raphael thought carefully before answering. "I don't feel victorious. I feel relieved. Relieved that the truth has finally been heard. Relieved that other artists won't have to go through what Mariana went through." Mariana was beside him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. "This woman here is the true hero of this story. She had everything to lose, and yet she chose the truth. That is real courage." Mariana wiped away her tears and smiled for the first time in weeks. "No, we both did this together, and all the musicians who had the courage to speak out. This victory belongs to all of us." The next day, the decision was announced. The judge was unyielding. Empire Records was ordered to pay massive damages to the exploited artists. Bianca Santoro was prohibited from claiming vocal abilities she did not possess and ordered to correctly credit all artists who contributed to her albums. More importantly, the decision set a legal precedent. Record labels would now be required to clearly disclose when they used studio voices. Artists would be entitled to proper credit and fair compensation. The industry was changing. A week after the verdict, Raphael received a call from a name he didn't expect: Robert Foster, artistic director of the independent record label Horizon Music. "Mr. Mendes, I have a proposal for you." Raphael listened as Robert explained. They wanted him to record an album, not pop music, not what was trendy, but opera, classics, the music Raphael truly loved. "And we want to do this right," Robert continued. "Total transparency. You'll have creative control, receive full credit, and a fair percentage of the profits. No abusive contracts." Raphael didn't know what to say. "I need to think." "Of course. But Mr. Mendes, one last thing. We want Mariana Coast to be your vocal producer. We think you two together would create something extraordinary." Raphael smiled. "Then I don't need to think. The answer is yes." 3 months later, Raphael was in a recording studio for the first time in 6 years, but it was different from anything he had experienced before. There was no pressure, there were no lies, just pure music. Mariana was on the other side of the glass, wearing headphones, smiling as she listened to him sing. When he finished the first track, she pressed the microphone button. "That was perfect, Raphael. Your voice is even more beautiful than it was 6 years ago." "It's because now it's truly mine," he replied. "There's no fear. There's no shame. Just the truth." The album, when released, was not a massive commercial success. It didn't top the pop charts, but it sold well. Critics praised it. More importantly, it was honest. And Raphael discovered that this was more satisfying than any platinum record could be. Isabella, now completely recovered, attended Raphael's first live show. She sat in the front row, holding Mrs. Beatrice's hand, her eyes shining with pride. When Raphael called her to the stage at the end of the show, the audience rose in a standing ovation. He picked her up and sang a song he had written especially for her. A song about love, about sacrifice, about choosing what truly matters. When the last note faded, there wasn't a dry eye in the theater. That night, putting Isabella to sleep, she held his hand. "Daddy?" "Yes, princess?" "Are you happy now?" Raphael thought about the question, thought about everything he had lost, about everything he had gained, about Caroline, who would never see this moment, about Mariana, who finally had her name in the credits, about all the artists who now had a voice. "I am," he replied, kissing her forehead. "I am very happy," and for the first time in 6 years it was completely true. A year after the day everything changed, Raphael was once again at the Grand City Theatre of London. But this time, it was different. Completely different. The auditorium was packed, but not with the elite who usually occupied those seats. The first 3 rows had been reserved for a special group, The cleaning staff, the kitchen staff, the maintenance crew. All those who, like Raphael had been, worked in the shadows for the show to happen. Mrs. Marlene was there, the lady who had helped him escape the reporters months ago. Mr. John, the session musician who had thanked Raphael at the press conference. Hundreds of people whose names no one knew but whose work made art possible. Backstage, Raphael adjusted the tuxedo that still felt strange on his shoulders. Isabella played beside him, twirling in the pink dress Mrs. Beatrice had sewn especially for the occasion. His daughter was unrecognizable from the pale, fragile child of a year ago. Now she had rosy cheeks, inexhaustible energy, and a smile that lit up any room. "Daddy, are you nervous?" she asked, noticing how he fiddled with his tie for the 10th time. "A little," he admitted. "Why?" "You sing beautifully." Raphael smiled and knelt to be at her height. "You know, Princess, a year ago I sang on this very stage. But that time I was angry. I was hurt. I wanted to prove something. And today, he held her tiny hands. I want to celebrate. Celebrate the truth. Celebrate the people who make beauty possible, even when no one sees it." Isabella tilted her head, processing. "Like Grandma who bakes cake every Sunday, but never eats it?" "Exactly like that," Raphael laughed. "Like Grandma who bakes cake." The dressing room door opened and Mariana entered, radiant in an elegant navy blue dress. In recent months, she had become not only Raphael's vocal producer, but a genuine friend, someone who understood what it was like to be reborn after years of invisibility. "It's time," she said. "The orchestra is ready." Raphael took a deep breath and stood up. "You're going to be amazing," Mariana continued, but there was emotion in her voice. "You know why? Because this time, every note is yours. Every word is true. And that's something no production, no effect, no trick can replicate." He nodded, not trusting his own voice at that moment. Mrs. Beatrice appeared to take Isabella to the audience. Before leaving, she looked at Raphael with those eyes that reminded him so much of Caroline. "My daughter is watching you today. I'm sure of it. And she's smiling." Raphael needed a moment alone after they left. He closed his eyes and allowed himself to remember. Caroline lying in the hospital bed, holding newborn Isabella, making him promise he would take care of her. That he would give her a life full of love and truth. "I'm keeping my promise," he whispered into the air. "Every day." When he stepped onto the stage, the ovation was instantaneous. But Raphael raised his hands, asking for silence. "Good evening," he said, his voice amplified by the loudspeakers. "Before we begin, there are some people I need to thank." He gestured to the front rows. "A year ago, I was one of them. An invisible worker. Someone people looked through, not at. And it was exactly that invisibility that taught me something important. That a person's true value isn't in the spotlight or the applause. It's in character, in honesty, in doing what's right, even when it's difficult." Applause began, but Raphael continued. "Today, this show isn't about me. It's about all the voices that were never heard, all the talents that were stolen, all the artists who created beauty in the shadows while others received the glory." He paused, looking directly at Mariana backstage. "But some of those voices are finally finding the light. Mariana Coast, would you please come here?" Mariana froze, clearly not expecting this. But the crowd began to applaud, and she had no choice but to step onto the stage. Raphael took her hand. This woman here lent her voice for years, created art that millions loved, and never received credit. Until now. He turned to the orchestra. "Conductor, the overture, please." The music began, and Raphael and Mariana sang together. A duet he had written especially for that night. A song about stepping out of the shadows, about finding courage, about reclaiming what is yours. When they finished, the audience was on its feet. Tears flowed freely. It wasn't just a performance. It was a moment of collective healing. The rest of the show was transcendent. Raphael sang opera, British classics, even a song he had composed for Isabella. Every note was pure, every word honest. During the final performance, he called Isabella to the stage. She climbed shyly, but her face glowed with happiness. "This song," Raphael explained to the audience, "is called promise kept. I wrote it for my daughter, for my mother-in-law, and for the memory of my wife, who taught me that some choices are difficult but never wrong. He sang, and Isabella stood by his side, holding his hand. When he reached the chorus, she began to sing along with her childish voice, off-key but full of love. The audience was emotionally devastated. Even the orchestra musicians had tears in their eyes. When the last note faded, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then, like a breaking wave, the ovation began. 5 minutes. 10. People didn't want to stop applauding. Raphael picked up Isabella and bowed. He called Mariana to the stage again. He called Mrs. Beatrice. He called the orchestra musicians. He even called the sound and lighting technicians, because everyone deserved to be seen. Backstage after the show, Raphael was surrounded by people wanting to congratulate him, but one particular figure caught his attention, Bianca Santoro. She looked different. No heavy makeup, no extravagant clothes, just a woman in her 30s, tired and visibly broken. "Raphael," she said, her voice barely audible in the noise. "Can I speak with you? Just a minute." Raphael looked at Vera, who was nearby. She nodded but stayed close. Bianca put her hands to her face. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just came to say that you were right about everything. I built a career on lies and thought that if I repeated those lies enough, they would become truth. But they never did." Raphael said nothing, just waited. "I lost everything," she continued. "The contracts, the sponsors, the friends I thought I had. But you know what was worse? Looking in the mirror and realizing I don't know who I am without the lies. I spent so much time pretending that I forgot how to be real." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you gave me something that night on stage." She looked at him for the first time. "You gave me a chance to stop, to finally be honest. It took a year, but I'm trying. I'm taking real singing lessons, not to be famous, just to finally learn how to sing." "That's good, Bianca, honestly." She nodded, tears streaming freely now. "You deserve everything you've achieved, all the happiness, because you chose the difficult path when it was much easier to lie." She turned to leave but stopped. "Take good care of that girl. She's very lucky to have you." And then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd. Vera approached Raphael. She seemed sincere. She did. But some wounds take time to heal. Maybe she'll find her way, maybe not. "But it's not my responsibility anymore," Vera smiled. "You've grown a lot, Raphael." "I had to grow. Life didn't give me a choice." In the following months, Raphael's story continued to inspire change. The British Association of Musicians created a fund for backstage artists. New laws were proposed protecting the copyrights of collaborators. Dozens of invisible musicians finally received credit for old works. Raphael used part of the profits from his album to create a foundation. Scholarships for underprivileged children who wanted to study music, not in search of fame, but for the love of art. Isabella, now completely healthy, began taking piano lessons. Not because Raphael wanted her to be a musician, but because she asked, "I want to make music like you, Daddy, but only if it's real." And Raphael realized that was exactly what he had achieved. Not fame, not wealth, but the freedom to be authentic, and to teach his daughter to do the same. On a quiet night, almost 2 years after that fateful performance, Raphael was home. Isabella slept in the next room. Mrs. Beatrice watched her favorite soap opera. Everything was peaceful. Raphael opened his laptop and read the news. Another record label had been sued for abusive practices. More artists were finding the courage to speak out. Change was slow, but it was real. He looked at the framed photo on the table. Caroline, smiling in that way that always made his heart race. She held newborn Isabella, so small and fragile. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I took care of her. And I made the world a little better in the process." And maybe, just maybe, that was what life truly asked for. Not grand gestures, not dramatic sacrifices, just the courage to be honest, to do what is right, to use your voice, literally and figuratively, to defend the truth. Raphael closed the laptop and went to check on Isabella one last time before bed. She lay peacefully, breathing softly, dreaming of whatever 7-year-olds dream of. He adjusted the blanket over her and kissed her forehead. "I love you, princess." And as he returned to his room, Raphael realized something profound. He was happy, genuinely, completely happy. Not because he had won, not because he had fame or money, but because for the first time in his life, every note he sang was truly his. And that was worth more than any empire of lies could offer. End of story. If Rafael Augustus Mendez Vieira's journey touched your heart, know that stories like this happen every day around us. Ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Invisible workers showing courage when it would be much easier to stay silent. Fathers and mothers sacrificing everything for their children. These are the stories that deserve to be told. The voices that deserve to be heard. If you believe in the power of truth, authenticity, and courage, leave a like on this video. If you know someone who needs to hear this message, share it. And if you have your own story of having chosen the difficult path because it was the right one, tell us in the comments. Let's create a community where honesty is celebrated and courage is recognized. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire, move, and remind us that, in the end, what truly matters is not how brightly we shine in the eyes of others, but how true we are in the eyes of those we love. Because we all have a voice, and all voices deserve to be heard. Until the next story. And remember, the truth can be silent, it can be slow, but when it finally sings, it changes the world.